aren't many books that you can genuinely say have changed your life, because I've read so many business books and most of them have actually been quite disappointing. A lot of them are just regurgitations of other books and I've not really learned anything new. But there are some books which I can say have genuinely changed my life, and the things I've actioned from them have been incredible. So I am here to share with you 5 of those books that I think are amazing, that I think absolutely every entrepreneur should read. So first of all, I think that many people read books but don't actually action anything that goes in those books. I think it's because of all these stats that are shared on social media about every successful entrepreneur reads 50 books a year. And I hear so many people in podcasts yeah, I read a book a week. This is so easy. Oh, I read 3 books a week. And I'm like, well, that takes time, because when I have a book app that tracks the time I take, and it's 8 to 10 hours for these books I read. And then I'm like, well, what do you do with that knowledge? A lot of people just read and then read and read, and they don't even action anything that goes on in those books. So I've started slowing down my reading to take time and actually make some notes and actually action them. And so I wanted to talk about 5 of the books that I've read, and I read more than once of them, and I have actually action points that have changed my business and my life, and I still actually do things from them. So I want to take each book and explain to you why I love them and what I've learned from them. So the first book I'm going to show you is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And this is not a surprise. Pretty much everyone's going to recommend this book. And if you haven't read it, then I don't know where you've been hiding. But it's one of the best books for self-improvement and just being able to create great habits. Now, James Clear has laid out a system where the point is it's called Atomic Habits. So you're not creating these giant goals that everyone fails. You're actually doing little tiny steps, 1% better every day. And you're trying to create healthy habits as opposed to big, lofty goals that you're more likely going to fail at achieving. And I think that, it's one of the New York Times bestseller. I think it's sold millions of copies. It's one of the most read books in the entire world. And I think that there's a reason for that. I've been able to achieve so many things since I've been reading this book. For example, I now eat more healthily. I find time in the day to work out. I've got a writing habit. I've been able to do so many different things thanks to the things that I've actually learned in this book. And I actually read this book every single January to kind of set the tone for the year. And because I grow and I'm a different person every single year, I read things in a different way. I learn new things every single time. So if you haven't read it, this is one of my favorite books to read. I think that every single person can gain some knowledge from this book. And my second book, I also read every January. So again, it's helping set the tone for the year. It's Deep Work by Cal Newport. And so I really like his work. I listen to his podcast. I have read all of his books. And Deep Work is all about basically really digging down to doing real work. Now, the problem I find these days is that we're so distracted by so many things. Emails are pinging, social media's pinging. We have so many fast-paced things to do. We've got Slack, we've got Asana, all the project management tools and the social media management tools. And we're just distracted by a million things that are happening every single day. But some of the work that's really important, we need to be focused. We need to be doing deep work. So that's what it's about. It's about taking your time to block out time in your day to really deep down and do this deep work without any distractions, and you can get so much more done and it's better quality, and that's why all your business strategy should be done as well. Now, when I first read this book, I actually hated it. I thought, what a load of malarkey. This guy's like some monk who wants to have nothing to do with digital world. And some of that's true. He doesn't use social media. He doesn't like a lot of that stuff. But I think I just thought, there's no way I can live my life like that. There's no way that I could be off social media and have fewer emails. My whole entire business revolves around it. And I genuinely thought that, and I couldn't open up my mind to this. And then I suddenly realized I do not need to be so attentive to all these devices. Things can wait. So if I block out certain time of the day to be able to do these things, actually I've got the rest of the day to focus and be more productive. Honestly, it's such a good read. I highly recommend it. As I said, I read it every January and it really reinforces a few points that I need to hear. And on the note of what should I focus on, I am loving the 80-20 principle. And this is known as Pareto's Law. And if you've not heard of it, essentially it means that 80% of what we achieve usually comes from 20% of our actions. So for example, in business, 80% of our income often comes from 20% of an activity that we do. And you need to find that 20% that generates 80% of our income. It's kind of crazy when we think that, because then when you start to read it, you start to think, well, what do I do with the rest of the 80% of my time? What a waste of time. And that's what you start to realize. You realize this in life. 80% of everything you do usually comes from 20% of what you do. I know it sounds really vague, but let me give you a specific example. For example, 80% of my leads in my business come from 20% of the events that I actually go to or I run. So I realized that I should really be focusing on those 20%. And in my life, for example, 80% of my positive energy come from only 20% of people. So those 20% of people are the people I should be hanging around with more. The other 80% often drain my energy, or they give me a bit of energy, but not enough. But 80% of my positive happiness and feelings and all those great energy and inspiration, motivation come from only 20% of people in my life. So when you start to realize how this principle works, you can start to analyze all the different things in your life and cut so much out. Because if you start to realize that the 20%, you can focus on that 20% and double down on that and get even more out of it. And it starts to help you cut out all the other crap in your life. And then when you start to hone down on that 20%, there'll probably be another 20% of that 20%. And you'll start to realize all the things you can really, really focus on to get the most out of life. And on the topic of motivation, a book that I love is Drive by Daniel Pink. And I think one of the reasons I loved it is because it's backed with science and research and all that sort of stuff. So it's not just like his opinion. And it helped me understand my team more as well. And I think being a manager is not easy. I believe that I'm more of a leader than a manager. And so when I've hired people for my team, I think that I thought I knew what drove them, but I didn't. For example, giving someone a salary increase because they said they want that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be happier and more fulfilled. And, this could be something else driving them. So reading this was really important because I feel like it helped me understand that more. And it has this concept of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And that if you want real drive and motivation, it has to come from within. It has to be this intrinsic motivation. And I think a lot of people are driven by extrinsic motivation, hence the need for social media likes, hence the need for social validation and people saying good attaboy or all that sort of stuff. And I think that it's helped me hone in on who I want as members for my club, who I want to work with as clients, because I want people who are intrinsically motivated to do their business, not the ones who are looking for that external validation, because I think then there's a deeper problem there. And I think they need to look into that and they need to work on that. And this book really helped me understand that and helped me understand who I want to work with. So the last book, I feel like is such an underestimated book. It's the one that really, really changed my business, and that is Profit First. And as the name says, it's all about putting your profit first. Now, those who know me, they know that I'm not money driven. I'm all about purpose driven businesses. But at the end of the day, a business is one that needs to make money. And I'm so sick of people talking about revenue when profit is the number that you need to know. So you could be bringing in millions and millions of pounds a month, but you could actually not be making any profit. And a lot of these big guys are doing that. And people are so focused on turnover, saying this is what they earn, but they don't actually take home that. I think profit is the number you should be focusing on. And so Profit First has allowed me to make changes in my business so that I never have to worry that I'm going to be able to pay the bills, or that I'm going to run out of money, because I'm able to budget forecast for this properly. And I was doing this in my personal life too, but I didn't realize I was doing it. So it actually taught me further techniques to be able to do this in my personal life. And actually these techniques are what actually helped me land my first dream home. And I was able to buy that myself because of the techniques that I learned from this Profit First. So I highly recommend it. So I still read a lot of books, and I don't now read one a week, which is what I used to do. Instead, I've slowed it down, and instead I read books and I take the time to write notes afterwards, make some action points, and make sure I actually follow up from them. Because at the end of the day, it does take a lot of time to be able to read books, and you want to make sure that you're getting an ROI on your investment in time, because time is money and all that sort of stuff. And as an entrepreneur, you know that you don't have that much time. And so I feel like even though it's really beneficial to learn this information and it is part of self-development, you want to be able to make sure that you're using that information so that your time is used in the best way possible. So I hope these book recommendations have been useful to you. I still read a ton of books, and I've got loads I'd highly recommend for anyone who wants to improve on their business or want to grow their business or mindset, money, all that sort of stuff. So if you want any recommendations in addition to these 5 that I recommend, please feel free to hit me up and I'll be happy to help.